Today's game may come as a bit of a surprise, particularly when I tell you that even after my very long playthroughs of Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition, Persona 4 Golden, and Dragon Quest XI, my most played Switch game to date is still Shadowverse Champions Battle, at over 95 hours. To say this game surprised me is a serious understatement, and I implore you to stick around so I can show you why. Let's check it out. We're going to quick get this story part out of the way because it's something you need to keep in mind when venturing into this game. The story is, in my opinion, not very good. Well, you can talk to and pet the cats, so that much is good, but the rest is super mid. It pulls a lot of material from the Shadowverse anime they made to promote the actual main Shadowverse collectible card game on mobile, and both this game on Switch and the anime were clearly aimed at kids. There is a bit of an identity crisis here, as the main Shadowverse collectible card game is a little dark, and some of the card art retained in this Switch game is clearly not aimed at kids, with some slightly spicy, almost like anime waifu shit, if you're into that sort of thing. Not saying that I am.
Are you sure about that?
But who gives a shit at the end of the day? The story is sufficient to provide a framework to keep the game moving forward, but the plot is thin, and the story beats are often logically bankrupt. For example, this entire world revolves around, and all problems are solved by, playing Shadowverse. You play as a generic male or female student joining a new school, and everyone in the school plays Shadowverse. All of the adults seem to play Shadowverse. And, spoiler alert, even the seedy criminal underworld that we infiltrate later in the game totally revolves around Shadowverse. This is made abundantly clear at the start of the game, and yet essentially the first major objective is to find the Shadowverse Club in our school, which somehow has a near fabled status. No one has any idea how to find out if it even exists, nor if it even has any members. Until we show up, that is, and have the brilliant idea to, and yes, I'm serious, ask people around the school. The writing team was not firing on all cylinders here, and some of the dialogue, despite being fully voice acted in both English and Japanese, which is crazy, but my god, is it cheesy at times. You may find the game charming at times. I don't want to knock it too hard, but my recommendation is to treat this game as a perhaps somewhat unintentional comedy, and push through some of the slower pacing at the beginning, because underneath this unfortunate knockoff Pokemon-ass looking game is one of, if not the most perfectly designed, single-player, deck-building, card-battling games in existence. And no, I am not exaggerating. The story takes a back seat quickly once you get through the opening act anyway, so it becomes much less relevant when you get through the introductory segments. Shadowverse Champions Battle was clearly a game that had a limited budget going into its development, but managed to pull off some miracles in spite of that. This game has an explorable open world, albeit not huge, with hidden items and secrets to find, as well as occasionally fully animated story cutscenes, pristine character portrait artwork, and special card animation sequences for many of the signature cards that you'll pick up along the way. All of the cards have voice acting work done as well, though I'm sure much of it is recycled directly from the mobile game. Still, that's a level of polish and a feeling of completeness in the details that you wouldn't expect from a game like this, especially after the somewhat middling first impression. The graphical presentation on display here ranges from pretty medium in the open world with noticeable aliasing, to actually pretty solid in the battle scenes, indoor areas, and scripted sequences. It's fairly impressive how sharp and polished the character artwork and battles are, and while you probably won't be wowed, as the game remains fairly clearly budget-focused, it's more than I expected by a pretty good margin. Also, it's a Switch game, so you probably weren't expecting much anyway. All things considered, the game honestly looks really solid for what it is. You're going to start sensing a theme here. The audio in Champions Battle is, again, surprisingly good. All main characters in the story, as well as every single card in the game, has voice acting. Or at the very least, its own sound clip. The dragons kinda roar, they don't talk, but you get my point. This is way more than I anticipated going into this, and the full English dub on top of the Japanese audio, that means they really went all in on this. They did not cheap out here. The soundtrack is also decent, though perhaps a little repetitive due to a thin selection of tracks, and underwhelming after a while, but again, it's more than solid enough to blend the experience together and fill in the background. Alright, you can't see, but I'm rubbing my hands together right now. The gameplay section is where we hit the real meat and potatoes of this experience, and the entire reason that I had to make this video. After everything I've said so far, we've got a solid 6 out of 10 game, tops. Gameplay is, I shit you not, a 10 out of 10 experience, at least relative to all other single-player card battling games that exist on the market. I'm not talking just on the Switch, mind you, I mean all time. See, these card games so often go the route of live service, as the main Shadowverse game has, because they can keep milking the same game, releasing new expansions and power creeping their way to hundreds of millions of dollars. And don't get me wrong, those games are fun, but that power creeping formula can make it increasingly difficult to get in as a newcomer, and increasingly complicated to keep playing as a veteran, trying to keep up with all the new systems and mechanics, and feeling pressured to buy up all the new cards in every set just to stay relevant. Most of these card games tend to go the same way in the end and become, pardon my language, a bit of a clusterfuck of combos and insane interactions. Not everyone has played it, but for those that did, remember how fun Hearthstone was when it first came out? Everything was new, the cards and decks all felt quote-unquote fair, and there were real discussions to be had about the value of a turn 4 Chillwind Yeti. Shadowverse Champions Battle has similar vibes, as it only incorporates the classic base set of the Shadowverse cards, plus the first 2 expansion sets, unlocked individually in stages as you progress through the game. This fleshes out the card pool in phases, and introduces new mechanics and synergies at a comfortable pace so that you can incorporate them into your existing card pool that you've been familiarizing yourself with through the deck building. Since the game has no monetary incentive to dangle in front of you, it absolutely showers you with booster packs and currency as you play. Fans of dopamine rejoice, as you'll be pulling that slot machine lever with incredible frequency. You can purchase card packs at kiosks that exist in nearly all explorable areas, and every kiosk has a few different individual cards you can purchase separately as well as deck sleeves with the art from those cards. As you advance through the game, you'll participate in hundreds of battles using decks built from any of the 7 classes in the game. This is the game's quote-unquote color system, if you're used to Magic the Gathering, and is very much akin to Hearthstone's class card system. Some cards are neutral and usable in all decks, whereas others are locked to only one class, and there are 7 very unique mechanics and playstyles. From the aggressive, bloodthirsty Bloodcraft class to the thunderous slam of the monstrous Dragoncraft cards you ramp into, as well as the spell-slinging Runecraft combos. Every playstyle and personality will find a good fit here. You can even play a slight range of aggressive, mid-range, or control strategies within each class archetype, so the possibilities really do feel open to your creativity and preferences. Deck building is easy and intuitive, and for those lacking either the desire or game sense to build strong, functioning decks as you play through the early portions of the game, fret not. Every single unique deck that you defeat from an opponent will be cataloged as a deck code stored in your deck building menu. You can access these codes as pre-built templates at any time, and will even let you track which cards from those deck lists you're missing to auto-build the deck should you wish to go hunt down those cards in kiosks and booster packs. These codes, at the very least, serve as solid inspiration to the high variance of strategies possible in the game as you advance to keep giving you new ideas. And you will need to use your brain here, as despite the childish coat of paint with the colorful graphics and the nonsensical story, the difficulty here as the game advances would melt the brain of your average child. I'm a seasoned Magic the Gathering player, I've played plenty of card games for many years, and I thought this game was going to be boring at the start, because just like the story, the gameplay starts out slow and easy, holding your hand and rigged in your favor. Fast forward just a couple of hours, and the story starts to take a back seat, and somewhere along the line, you're going to feel a difficulty spike where the wins are no longer free. And that's where the game starts tightening the screws on you, forcing you to refine multiple decks and strategies, advancing into the late game to tackle some truly brutal opponents. The game starts out rigged in your favor, but by the end can occasionally feel somewhat the opposite. Don't count that as a negative though. I found it quite refreshing that a game that started out with such a low bar of expectations was genuinely challenging me at times by the halfway point. The battle system is very similar to Hearthstone. You get 1 extra mana crystal per turn, unless you're playing a deck that ramps your mana, of course. Damage persists on creatures across turns, and you can't take actions on your opponent's turn like you would in Magic the Gathering. There are taunt creatures, called Ward here. Enters the battlefield effects, the full suite of common card battle mechanics that you're used to if you've played games like this before. It's simple enough to pick up and learn if you're new to this kind of thing, given the slow start, but a genuine challenge for even seasoned card gamers by the end. There's even a unique Evolve mechanic that lets you power up creatures to attack the same turn you play them, improves their stats, and sometimes yields powerful bonus effects. All additional layers to the strategy of this game that keeps it feeling fresh relative to its contemporaries. One minor gripe I had with the game, and I really do mean minor, is the performance. This is not an action game, not by any stretch of the imagination, so precise inputs are not required, and smooth frame rates only serve to improve the feel of the game. It will never cost you a match, as none of the mechanics have any timed components to them. That said, open world exploration is a little choppy sometimes, despite the lower resolution presentation, and it isn't great. This does not make up a significant portion of the game, so it's not a huge issue, and again, doesn't affect the game where it counts. But it is annoying, so I wanted to mention it. Everything else in the game, though, is smooth as butter and feels great, including the battling, which is most of the gameplay. It was just this one area that I noticed the Switch's performance was buckling. Shadowverse Champions Battle has been the most pleasant surprise I've found in a video game in probably over a decade. What started out as an impulse buy of a very cheap game, by the way, turned into one of my most beloved experiences on the Nintendo Switch to date. It's not going to be to everyone's taste, but if you can slog through the first couple of hours of introduction and tutorializing, and you have even a passing interest in card games, rip and booster packs, and creative deck building, trust me, you simply cannot afford to pass this one up. The depth provided to the deck building by the ever-expanding card pool and mechanics, and the increasingly difficult challenges to overcome, forcing you to go deep into the tank to brainstorm deck tweaks, to jump those hurdles. It's addictive, plain and simple, and it's one of the first games in a long while that I made a genuine attempt to 100% clear. I hope you pick it up, and I really hope you enjoy it, because from the research I've done, there are no other games that do exactly this single-player collectible card game battler thing at this level. If you know of any, I'm looking, so please recommend them. And please subscribe if you like this or nostalgic content, and thanks for stopping by.